episode 398. I started out my episode on receiving feedback as follows. Receiving critical feedback is never easy. I'm starting this episode on giving feedback the same way. Giving critical feedback is never easy. The emphasis is on critical. Feedback that is positive and encouraging comes much easier to us than the feedback that aims to correct someone's behavior, at least in person. On the internet, people hide behind their screens and feel safe to throw darts. Those people that would never say anything in person because they're afraid. They attack those whose courage they admire. It's easy to criticize when you're not face to face. You don't have to think about the tone of your voice, your body posture, your gesture, and most importantly, the other person. It's hard to look someone in the eyes and tell them they did something wrong. It's much easier to do when the person is not in front of you. Criticism is a threat. It's difficult to give and to receive. It attacks our sense of safety. Threats to our standing in the eyes of others are remarkably potent biologically, almost as those to our very survival, says psychologist Daniel Goleman. Just like you wouldn't want to hear over text or on Twitter that you screwed up, you also don't want to be that person sending it. Take the time to give feedback in person, or at least do it over the phone. Giving critical feedback should come from a place of care. You want the other person to know and improve. Otherwise, you wouldn't go through the process of telling them. And that interest should warrant an in-person meeting. A challenge I noticed in this digital age where we are connected with anyone, anytime. We give feedback often without taking notice. In the middle of a texting exchange, it's easy to drop the ball on the other person. Since it's so easy to type a few words and click send, we aren't even conscious all the time on the effect of our words. I noticed I wrap up my feedback into emojis or supposedly funny messages when there is really an issue I should be addressing more directly. It's important that we become conscious that when something bugs us, to put it aside while we are texting or posting online and wait until we see the person. I am working really hard on keeping my text messages positive and save any major concerns I have for later when I see the person. Electronic feedback on important issues just isn't effective. We don't get to see the person, interact with them, refine our words, explain, and most importantly, relate. Feedback is not just a bomb that drops. It should be a conversation. Next, focus your feedback just on the issue at hand. I've been in relationships where partners dropped years' worth of feedback on me in one session. And it sucks. I can't explain myself, A, for so much at once, and B, for stuff so old. So I'm sensitive to this important aspect of feedback. Focus on one situation only. I realized that by the time we ramp up the courage to speak to the other person we care for, several things similar to the igniting event have occurred, and we feel we need them as ammunition to prove we have a good point. I don't think it's necessary. It only pushes the other person into a corner more and more. Focus on one event. Describe how you felt, how their actions and their words made you feel. Not attacking the person so they feel like they're not worth anything. Not judging or blaming them, but focusing on the specific words and actions. When you said or did X, I felt Y. At work, when someone misses something, as is often the reason I need to give feedback, I focus on that one situation, but I don't push on it. Here's what you've missed. Then I immediately turn towards the future. Going forward, I need this because. I explain why the mistake mattered to ensure the other person understands that it's not about them. The same is possible with your partner or friends. But I notice it's hard. It takes some digging within ourselves to really figure out what it is we need from our partner. We are clear when we are hurt, but we don't always realize why. This is the only time you will hear me say that texting is better. Why? Because I get a chance to think about my words and figure out why a certain event bugged me. But, and here's where I withdraw my statement again, we need to think about this prior to our conversation. However, we are mostly just focused on how to say what it is we feel that we forget to think about why it matters to us. And I need this reminder as well. With an employee, it's easy. I need this report on Monday because that is when I have my meeting with my boss. Done. With a partner or a friend, it's more fuzzy. It challenges us to think about our values. When the person you care for hurts your feelings, it's not always clear right away why. That is where we need to think. What do you value? Honesty, respect, clear communication, punctuality. These are some of the values we seek, but we often cannot articulate them well. Instead, we attack the person. You were late again. You didn't tell me about this. I don't find it hard to give examples because I do it too. If we can focus on how we feel and why it matters, the feedback will be better received and the other person will feel more appreciated. I also don't think it's needed to butter up the person with something positive before and after, often called the sandwich method, where the negative is packed in between two positives. There are times when this might be appropriate. During an employee review, for example, when you share both positive and feedback anyway. But just to make the person feel at ease with something positive so you can then drop the ball, it doesn't work for me. I can always tell when something negative is about to come. The positive just sounds too artificial. When you approach a person with care and commitment to make a difference, then it's not needed to butter up your feedback. Be clear, concise, and to the point, and then explain why it's important to you. And lastly, ask the other person for input. Anything they might want to add. For an employee, I often ask if we're in agreement. I may say, does this work for you? Can you do this? Is my request feasible? With a friend, I ask what their thoughts are about my feedback. I give the other person a chance to respond. It opens the door for honest communication. Not arguing, not fighting. If the other person doesn't agree or refuses to accept the feedback, there's not much we can do. Getting argumentative by trying to force them to see our point is not productive and it will only make things worse. I know it's not easy, but feedback is best avoided when you're tired or in a bad mood because of something else. Trust me, I know it won't go well. You won't be in a good place to deliver your message, and the other person will notice it. It is also not a good idea when you want something else other than to help guide the other person. Sometimes we have ulterior motives. We want to hurt someone back because they hurt us, or we're trying to make someone else happy. Early in my career, I remember criticizing an employee just because my boss was upset at that person. I let that influence my behaviors and delivered a pretty ineffective feedback because it didn't come from me. Again, take time to think before you give feedback and reflect. What is my goal here? Do I have good intentions? And then reflect on the reasons it matters to you that the other person changes. Think of feedback and respectful confrontation as gifts you want to share to help someone else grow. The great thing is, not only does the other person benefit from your feedback, both of you grow. It will help you become better at communicating your feelings in a constructive way. Giving feedback properly and without upsetting the other person is a fundamental life skill we all need. So don't be afraid. If you feel uncomfortable or not prepared, practice it with a friend. Ask him or her if you can rehearse the feedback you would like to give to someone else. Work on your words, your tone of voice, and on the content of your feedback. I often talk it through with myself. I hope this helps you next time you're in a situation where you need to give critical feedback. Don't shy away from it. The better you master this, the more honest your communication will be, resulting in better relationships. Much love.